Nothing truly compares to the feeling of winning your first Formula One World Championship, something even Max Verstappen has mentioned in many of his interviews. However, the Dutchman, actually born in Belgium, has been at the centre of the F1 world for the better part of a decade. Surprisingly, he is yet to turn 28 years old and might have a much more illustrious career than Lewis or even Alonso. From breaking world records that will forever stand to being compared with the likes of the Great Ayrton Senna, these are 10 of the most iconic moments Super Max has ever had. Let's face it, every young F1 fan dreams of entering the sport. In fact, ask any 6-year-old F1 fan and they will quickly tell you how they can also drive the impressive Red Bull RB20. Well, for the Dutchman, this was not merely a dream, but a reality waiting to happen. Through his impressive years of karting and racking up victory after victory, the stage would be set for the Dutchman to make his debut in the pinnacle of motorsport. After replacing Jean-Eric Vergne at Toro Rosso for the 2015 Formula One season, excitement was high to see what the Dutchman could do. He would also set a record that will never be broken. Max debuted in his first competitive race, aged just 17 years and 166 days, making an iconic moment. Since his debut, F1 rules have changed, requiring drivers to be at least 18 years old and hold a valid driver's license. This would kick off what would become an excellent 10-year journey to date. Despite being only 17 years old and in a car that should never have been able to compete, Max was already showing a blistering pace. He would even outpace his new teammate Carlos Sainz despite being far less experienced than the Spaniard. After making his debut in Australia, the next race of the season was in Malaysia, where Max would once again etch his name in the record books. Despite a little luck, after setting a banking lap before the heavens opened in Q3, the Dutchman found himself starting in the top half of the grid. With the weather worsening through Sunday, no one knew whether or not he could sustain this. The following day, Max proved just how good he was. With better conditions and a drying track, he kept himself firmly in the points. The Dutchman finished the race in a cool P7, which would earn him the record for the youngest ever point scorer in Formula One. This would not only help him earn respect on the grid. The following season, Max would quickly be thrust into another career-defining moment. Racing for the lower points carries a lot of pressure, but when you're thrust into any of the top 3 teams, things kick into a new gear. With a few poor performances in the early rounds, Red Bull announced that Max would replace Daniel Kvyat in the factory team for the Spanish Grand Prix. The pressure was truly on for the Dutchman, who would now have to go toe-to-toe with an incredible driver in Daniel Ricciardo. Despite his first race for the Racing Bulls, Max managed to put his car in 4th place on the grid, a feat no one truly expected. However, this would be just the start of another record-breaking weekend. The following day, the unthinkable happened when title rivals Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg collided heading into Turn 4. This opened up a gap for the Dutchman to push through and take the lead. Despite a continued barrage of pressure from Ferrari and Kimi Räikkönen, Max continued to keep his cool. The Dutchman would become the youngest ever Formula One race winner and ultimately solidified his place in the record books. It was at this moment that Mercedes realised, oh shit, Max is coming. Whilst Max has been called everything in the book, being labelled as a dangerous driver is the one thing that has stuck since the beginning. In fact, it was a few races later at Spa where the Dutchman revealed his intentions to win. From the race start, Max was aggressive, first colliding with Räikkönen at the first corner, before pushing the Finnish driver, Sebastian Vettel, and future teammate Sergio Perez wide at Les Combes. Max would finish this off by purely blocking Räikkönen when the Ferrari driver had a clear run on him up the Kemmel Straight. This would earn Max the moniker of being a dangerous driver, with everyone, including Kimi, being visibly frustrated. It might not be one of Max's proudest moments, but it certainly set the tone for his career. Many people love to compare Verstappen to Ayrton Senna. Both the Dutchman and the Brazilian have a uniquely aggressive style. However, aggression doesn't win championships, but rather it is skill and control. This is exactly what happened during the 2016 Brazilian Grand Prix. Once again, Max started the race in 4th, but with the heavens opening up to another bout of biblical rain, traction was a rarity. However, Verstappen continued pushing and pushing, but in a moment of brilliance or luck, depending on if you're a Red Bull fan, Max lost traction, leading to oversteering on the main straight. Remaining cool as a cucumber, the Dutchman saved the car, but sadly had to pit for some fresh rubber. After exiting the pits in 16th place, he was on a charge. With 15 laps remaining, Super Max came into his own, overtaking almost the entire grid to finish 3rd. Even Toto Wolff called the race the Verstappen show. Let's face it, Max has had some impressive drives in his career. One which is still to come in this video and might blow your mind. However, the 2022 Formula 1 season was supposedly on a knife edge, with Leclerc turning out to be the main contender for the title. Despite the Ferrari dropping away in the latter half of the season, Max still had a job to do. This time, the Dutchman needed a victory at Suzuka to seal his 2nd World Championship. Max, not wanting to leave the championship another week, set pole by clipping Leclerc by just 0.010 seconds. After the race had been red flagged following a lap 2 incident, a lengthy delay ensued. The race would only be 28 laps. Despite Charles diving into the first corner on lap 1 after the restart, Verstappen kept his cool. With only a few laps to win the race, the Dutchman eked out a massive 27-second gap, leaving everyone in his wake. Verstappen would earn his 2nd World Championship with many races to spare. Once again, we head to Brazil for what was one of the craziest races in recent memory. Despite everyone believing Lewis Hamilton to have the best comeback with his beast in 2021, it pales into comparison to Verstappen in 2024. The main difference is the fact that Max only had the 3rd fastest car on the grid. Taking a penalty for engine components and in a close battle with Lando Norris for the driver's title, the Dutchman had his work cut out. Not only was he stumped by a safety car infringement during the sprint, but he would fall victim to a red flag during Q1. This meant the Dutchman would need to defend his title from 17th on the grid. Once again, the heavens opened up on Sunday, levelling the performance differences and bringing it down to pure skill. Max carved his way through the grid, and despite safety cars and a red flag, the Dutchman was simply untouchable. He would finish the race on the top step of the podium, showing that he could rely on skill instead of car performance. By now, everyone should know exactly how the 2021 Formula 1 season played out. Despite Hamilton's performance advantage, Max had a strategy heading into the Texas Grand Prix. With Max on older rubber, Bono was on the radio to Lewis. It's all about the last 3 laps. A mistake from Bono miscalculating Verstappen's rapid pace. After his 2nd pit stop, Lewis seemed at one with the car, with the gap to Max tumbling lap after lap until there were only 6 laps left. Despite the back markers, Verstappen carefully navigated every bend and every car, keeping his car firmly in the lead. Lewis threw everything at the championship leader, but in the end, the Dutchman retained P1, winning another incredible race. Max somewhat extended his gap to the reigning champ, but would earn the full points and retained his overall lead in the championship. Even Christian Horner proclaimed it to be a classy display. The Miami Grand Prix is slowly becoming one of the most prestigious races on the calendar. However, the Dutchman has been dominant in the United States over the last 4 years, and this wasn't about to change in Miami. Despite having a shocking Q3 and the Dutchman having to start the race in P9, everyone knew that it would only be a matter of time before he made his way to the front, and this is exactly what happened. Even Alonso said that he expected Max to pass him by lap 15. Starting on the hard tyres, Max could go much deeper into the race, a tactic proving pivotal when everyone went into the box. Even with Perez on fresher rubber, Max would catch up to him, with only 4 seconds separating the two when the Dutchman finally pitted on lap 45. However, he would come out as a man possessed, eating into Checo's gap. Despite a truly brilliant drive from the Mexican, Max would pass him and seal the victory in the closing stages, proving that no one could go toe-to-toe with the Dutchman, even in the same machinery. The most controversial F1 season is also one of Max Verstappen's most iconic moments. Heading into the Abu Dhabi race, Verstappen was leading the championship simply by having more victories over Lewis Hamilton, but a few upgrades in the Mercedes seemed like a beast on track. Despite starting on pole, Max was jumped by Lewis, who would go on to eke out a more than 20-second gap by the time the pit stops had finished. In fact, not even Perez could slow down Lewis despite doing everything within his power and costing himself a good position. But a few laps before the end, the F1 gods must have answered one of Christian Horner's prayers. Williams driver Nicholas Latifi spun into the barrier, bringing out the safety car. Everyone scurried to clean the track, and with 1 lap remaining, Michael Massey, F1 race director, waved the green flag. Max, who had pitted, was on fresh soft tyres, but despite everything Lewis had tried, the tyre offset was too much and Max dive-bombed the reigning champ into turn 5. The rest, as they say, is history. Whether you love Max or hate him, there's absolutely no denying his absolute brilliance. In fact, most people hate him, much like Michael Schumacher. But if you want to see who the most hated and adored drivers in F1 history are, make sure to check out this video next. Until next time, it's lights off and bye-bye!